What's going on, guys? This is Ryan with RK Outpost, and we may have figured out why so many people are afraid to give The Last of Us Part 2 a negative review. And it has to do with the vile, disgusting actions of Sony and Naughty Dog behind the scenes and what they do if you don't leave a positive review. And it is shocking the gaming world. We know the lengths that Sony and Naughty Dog and Neil Druckmann himself have gone to try to protect the PR surrounding this game, including false advertising in the trailers, including false copyright strikes and illegal DMCA abuse to try to take down people who are critical of this game, and now harassing reviewers who don't say what they want you to say about this game. Let's get into it right here. You can see this tweet. This is where it started. Had a lot of people tag me, so thank you guys for alerting me to this tweet. Legacy Killer HD, great YouTube channel. Go check it out. This is so effing weird. Based on reporting coming from Polygon, yes, Polygon of all sources, Sony reps on behalf of Naughty Dog reached out to Vice about their negative review of The Last of Us Part 2. Apparently, they didn't agree with some of the opinions and points made in the review. What the? Yes, they didn't agree with the review, so they reached out to talk to them behind the scenes. Come on, Neil Druckmann. You guys are better than this. Just why? Do you like having these stupid conspiracies pop up about you paying off reviewers? Because things like this definitely fuel those claims. And when you hear those things like, oh, the reviews are bought and paid for, it's just like he says here. That doesn't mean that people literally think money is changing hands. What it means is that if you don't give a positive review of this game, you are going to lose your access. You are not going to be able to get the access to the developers as you have them reaching out and saying, why'd you give this a negative review? Why did you give this a negative review? I really think you should reconsider these things, don't you? This is disgusting, and I cannot believe that we found this out, but kudos to Polygon for putting this out. This is actually a pretty good article. I don't agree with everything, but we are going to go through it. But just before we get to that quote, I do just want to go to Metacritic. And one thing that everyone needs to understand about this, it's still at a -4, 110 critic reviews, 103 positive, 7 mixed. But you know what? There's a bunch of them down here that they didn't assign a number to it, right? They did not assign a number to it. And it just happens that almost all of these ones who didn't assign a number to it are harsh on the game. They are negative on the game. Ars Technica destroyed this game. CNET was pretty hard on this game. Eurogamer was fairly hard on this game. Kotaku, Polygon were hard on this game. The Jimquisition, Jim Sterling, did not like it. The Verge was hard on the game. Time and Vice, the one we're talking about, the one that Naughty Dog didn't like what they wrote, so they reached out to them, at least the one that we know of that they reached out to, not scored. I think there's a reason why the people that don't score these reviews were able to be harsher, because they were scared of putting a negative review out there, of having something like a 5 out there to go on Metacritic. I think that really plays a part, and that's why you see the ones that aren't scored are so much harder, because they're scared of what Naughty Dog will do. But this article right here, The Last of Us Part 2 is becoming minefield. Devs, critics, and fans butt heads over one of the year's biggest games. And for all the people that are crowing like this is being universally hailed as a masterpiece, you're just wrong. It is not some small section of fans that are having a problem with this game. It is very divisive. Any of the conversation you have about this game is divisive. It's just like The Last Jedi. By all accounts, The Last of Us Part 2 is a smashing success. The horror game has a 94 on Metacritic and has already sold millions of copies. Sony called it the fastest selling first-party PS4 exclusive ever, which would be cause to celebrate. Except for the fact that merely discussing the game has become, within large swaths of the video game community, toxic. There's that word, toxic. It's exhausting. The dour stage was set before release when part of the game leaked online. Sony said they had identified the people responsible, not before it went public. Then this is one of the things I do have a little bit of a problem with. The story beats revealed in the leaks and the game's LGBTQ representation. Some bigoted reactionaries began a campaign to spoil the experience for other folks. I think that the vast majority of people, we've gone over this over and over again, the vast majority of people had a problem with the story and what they did to Joel. That is the big takeaway from this game, from those leaks. And then there's the quotes from Neil Druckmann about how it was the worst day of his life when it happened, because the lengths, Neil Druckmann told us himself, the lengths they went through to try to protect this story. And by protect the story, I mean lie to the public, because you know damn well that if the public knew this game would be entirely about Ellie and Abby, they wouldn't have sold 4 million copies. That's why they tricked you to make you think it was about Joel and Ellie. Discussions about the survival horror game were also hampered, yes, this is a great point, by unusually restrictive embargo guidelines, which included sentences like, do not include any beat-by-beat descriptions of pivotal narrative or cutscene moments, and do not reveal the fate of any character or the inciting event. This prevented websites from discussing any specifics on the game's story, which was tricky, considering it reveals something in the first 2 hours, which impacts the remainder. And we are going to talk spoilers here, guys, so if you don't want to be spoiled, don't watch the rest. When they killed Joel, you weren't allowed to talk about them killing Joel. You weren't allowed to mention Abby in the review. You weren't allowed to talk about Lev in the game. I mean, there are so many things here that they restricted people. Everyone was coming out and saying that it's not normal. This is not natural. Curiously, at least one website, GameSpot, published 2 reviews, one without spoilers and one with spoilers. Why go through such lengths, especially when the internet was flooded with half-informed takes and speculation? Control. Naughty Dog no longer steered the narrative, and this was one way to try to regain control. A studio had already gone to great efforts to maintain a tight grip. As Kotaku reported, they showed a fake scene during a trailer. The false advertising, like we've talked about so much on this channel, the fake scenes, the fake models of Joel, and even fake gameplay for games journalists to come and play to mislead them as well. So they would have the support when the story got out there. Disgusting. The vibe around the game hasn't got much better. Here it is. Vice published its review of The Last of Us Part 2, in which critic Rob Zacny said that while the game had memorable moments that made for great spectacle, he was less taken with the story and the characters. Nobody ever reconsiders their quest for vengeance. Everyone acts under a kind of vindictive compulsion that goes little remarked and unexamined. Zacny went on to describe that it was full of oppressive bleakness and violence. And this is the thing. You have so many critics. It's got a 94, one of the best reviewed games of PS4. Everyone is raving about it, all the critics. But Naughty Dog just couldn't handle one person saying something negative. How ridiculous. While the vast majority of reviews have lavished The Last of Us Part 2, a handful of outlets, Polygon included, have been slightly more critical of the blockbuster game. According to Zacny, Vice's review prompted a Sony rep to reach out on behalf of Naughty Dog. They felt some of the conclusions I reached in my review were unfair and dismissed some meaningful changes or improvements, Zacny told Polygon. Zacny clarified the exchange wasn't confrontational, but it was unusual, as the site doesn't typically have big publishers asking in official capacity why a review reads the way it does. He goes on to say some things can happen with a small publisher if there's something factually incorrect, but not when it's based on an opinion, which this review was based on an opinion, his opinion. And Naughty Dog just didn't like that. Neil Druckmann, Sony, these people just can't handle it if you don't love the game. I was happy to unpack my reasoning and received a perfectly cordial message in response. Naughty Dog's PR team declined to comment. Of course, I'm sure that Mr. Zacny will not be getting a review copy from any Naughty Dog game in the future. I guarantee that. There's no way. There is no way he does in the future, and that is the problem with this system. On social media, responses from the creative team have been getting more personal, indeed, including Neil Druckmann hopping into discussion to wag his finger at journalists who are making a joke. Neil Druckmann does seem very defensive. And then, of course, you see Jason Schreier, and Jason Schreier got involved in this too. Jason Schreier, who's kind of hated by everyone, but specifically, he is one of the people that did a hit piece on Naughty Dog and how the work conditions are, how so many people hate working there because of the work conditions. And Troy Baker responds to him, trying to compare Jason Schreier when he says video games are too long. He puts a quote from Teddy Roosevelt talking about literal warfare. Troy Baker comparing his voice acting and the work on The Last of Us Part 2 to literal warfare. What a piece of shit. Troy Baker is ridiculous. And so that is happening right now as well. And this last paragraph, I think, is worth reading. But based on my own conversation with fellow critics, many have assumed an air of wariness about The Last of Us Part 2 discourse. It feels as if there are all these larger forces working to maintain the status quo when it comes to big budget games. It's not enough that the game is selling well and that most reviews are positive. You can't fall out of line with that general consensus, even as a joke, without having to worry about whether or not a publisher will be looking over your shoulder or if hundreds of fans will blow up your social media. It is not an environment that is conducive to encouraging honest reviews or critical discussion, which is ultimately a disservice to the game itself. Very interesting article from Polygon. Again, I think that was, here it is, Patricia Hernandez. Really interesting article, and it just goes to show you, this is exactly what we have been saying from the beginning. The way that Naughty Dog has treated these things, the way they've tried to take advantage of the media. Use the media to their benefit because it's all about access, it's all about control, and games journalism is a thing of the past for most people. We've talked about this a lot on this channel, and the fact that they are reaching out to people who reviewed it negatively to try to sway their opinions or understand why, harassing them for leaving a negative review, is disgusting and despicable. Naughty Dog and Sony should be ashamed of themselves, and so should Neil Druckmann. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Make sure you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I will talk to you later. Thanks for watching, everyone, and a huge shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram? Check out the description below. You'll find links to my P.O. box and my Patreon as well. And I'll talk to you guys later.